Rules, 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 rules. Today we're going to talk about rules. There's rules everywhere. Sports, business, board games, your government. Why do we need them? Why do we have them? Let's look at the lockdown. All across the world due to a virus, they've defined a couple of rules.
You shall not buy liquor. There shall be no dogs that will be walked.
The goal of all these rules is to basically stop the spread of the virus. In soccer, for instance, you don't just kick a ball around frivolously for hours. Soccer is defined by a set of rules. The players perform within the constraints of these rules. So at the end, that their specific outcome is achieved, which is scoring a little goal and your team winning. So let's talk about business rules. So business rules are exactly the same. Business rules is just to define structure within the business and to influence behavior towards a specified outcome. So this is normally how you implement your strategy. So rules basically describe the operations, the definition, and the constraints that shape the business. Rules can apply to people, processes, behavior, computer systems, and these are all put in place so the organization can achieve its goal. Business rules are often within the organization's consciousness. It's within the people in the business performing the actions. And a lot of these things are unspoken, but it's the consciousness and soul of the business. So unearth these unspoken rules. They can also be explicit, so there might be some documentation, some business rules documentation that actually define it very clearly, so it's there, so you can actually look at those rules. So let's look at the kind of rules you get. So first of all, you get definitional rules. You can't violate these rules, but they can be misapplied. They can be true or they can be false in terms of a concept. These shape concepts. They define things within the organization. Let's give you some examples of this. In an investment bank, a high net worth individual is defined as someone who earns more than $2 million a year. That is a thing that cannot be violated. It's either true or false. You're either a high net worth individual as a client or not a high net worth individual. So now with the lockdown, we have a definition. The definition is you can only purchase essential goods. So they went through this whole hoo-ha of stating what an essential good is. Essential good is something that you can eat or medication. If you want to buy HDMI cable, sorry, they will be like, you can't buy, that's not an essential good. In terms of soccer, a definitional rule would be the ball must be round and it must be 50 centimeters in diameter. Definitional rules could, for instance, also define how a specific concept is derived or inferred. So in this case, it might be a calculation. So a calculation rule is a kind of definitional because it defines the calculation for that definition and how it's derived. So for instance, VAT, value added tax. The VAT calculation rule is 15% multiplied by the cost of the goods or services. So now let's look at another one. So let's look in terms of the lockdown. 2 meter rule. A radius of 2 meters around you, that is the infectious zone. So you can, if you have a little sneeze, you can infect someone. So the next rule type, behavioral rules. Now this is the one I find fascinating. It builds on the definitional rules because it uses the definitional rules as input. The behavioral rules are all about people, all about actions. These can be violated. So they can be violated by a person or a process. It defines what people can do and what people cannot do, so constraint or allow. Because of the fact that these rules can be violated, you need to be very, very aware of your tolerance of the violation. So you might need to impose some penalties or sanctions if a rule is violated. These behavioral rules impact the day-to-day action activities, so they either constrain the employee from not doing something or they provide them with the obligation to do something. So this is the easiest way to implement a strategy is by having behavioral rules that support your strategy. Let's look at some examples of behavioral rules. Let's look at the lockdown. You may not walk your dog. Can't walk your dog. You may walk if you are walking for essential service, which was defined, essential item was defined in our descriptional rules. In terms of soccer, you cannot touch the ball with your hands, you need to use your feet. Let's look in business. Do not send spam emails to a high net worth individual. How do we deal with violating these rules? You can't violate it, that's very strict. There must be penalties in place, sanctions. Second one is, if you violate a rule, there should be an override by an authorized user. Someone in a higher position needs to go like, yeah, that's fine, you can touch it. Third one is override with the explanations. You override it like, he did take a walk with his dog, but that dog was actually sick and he had to take it to the vet. And then the last one is no enforcement. So even though it could be true or untrue, you can violate it. So the last one is no enforcement. There's no consequence if you violate it. So this you should see actually more as a guideline. That's what it is. That's actually a guideline.